Hey everyone out there, and welcome to today's Search Engine Journal webinar. Hope you're having a great day, and we're so thrilled to have you here with us. I'm joined by Morty of SEMrush, who is going to be sharing with us landing page SEO best practices and tips for success. Google launched about a dozen algorithm updates and countless minor updates this year. And I wish I could see all of you because I'd ask for a show of hands. As an SEO professional, how many of you had landing page performance impacted due to these updates? I think there'd be a lot of hands raised. So today, Morty is going to help you see better results from your landing page SEO. You'll walk away with knowledge on the best content to use, and hint, it's not always your sales content, and how to convert without pushing conversions. So it's time to get into ninja mode. But before we get too deep into this, my name is Heather Campbell, and I'm going to be your moderator today. Morty, thanks for being here with us. And before we get into some general housekeeping, can you tell us a bit about yourself and SEMrush?
Sure. So I'm Morty Oberstein. I'm the head of communications at SEMrush. And SEMrush, in case you don't know, is an all-in-one digital marketing and SEO platform. So it's basically a way where you can monitor your own performance, your competitors' performance across really all channels from organic to paid to social. It's an all-in-one digital marketing and SEO solution. So I hope I did my job pitching that well.
I thought you pitched it very well.
Thank you
Very
so
concise.
much.
All right, so real quick, just for our viewers out there, if during this training presentation you have any questions or comments, please use the questions box at the bottom of your screen to enter those. As you're learning and taking this information, ask for further clarification. Chances are you might not be the only one thinking about that. So we'll do our best to link to any resources or tools in the chat, but if we miss one, use the questions box to ask. And we will be having a Q&A at the end of this presentation. After the webinar, stick around for a short survey. It doesn't take any more than like 3 minutes, and it really helps us gauge what works for you and how we can make SEJ webinars better. So lastly, and this is the question we get asked the most, is yes, you will receive this full recording after today's session, so watch your inbox for those. And that's enough from me. So I'll be back at the Q&A. Morty, it's all yours.
So here we go. Here's what we're here for: landing page optimization. So I'll start this off by saying, like, there are certain elements in SEO, certain parts of SEO that sort of lag behind. They don't progress. We're sort of treating it like it's 1999. Well, it's a little early, 2005 maybe. And landing pages are one of those things. And I think there's a very good reason why that is, and I'll get into that. But the most important thing to realize is that, landing pages and SEO, the entire landscape, everything has changed. The entire ecosystem has changed, and I'm going to be going into how users have changed, how Google has changed, how those two changes or units changing are basically the same thing. Both people and search engines are kind of going in the same direction. What that means for your landing pages, and we're going to go into a little bit of a fun little data journey to try to support what we're talking about. And at the way end, I'll go into the mindset as opposed to just the tips. I'll give you tips, but the mindset that I think is really important when dealing with landing pages in the current environment that is Google. Here we go. So people have changed. People have changed dramatically over the past few years. They're far more tech savvy. I think maybe tech savvy, tech aware is a better expression. I should have put aware instead of savvy. People are far more tech aware. And I'll give you a good illustration of this. So when we as digital marketers or SEOs, we see Google or Facebook going in front of Congress and they're getting quizzed and questioned, we almost laugh at it because the questions that Congress or whatever government is asking are kind of silly a lot of the time. Like, oh yeah, wow, they really have no idea what they're talking about. But the average person, it's important to remember this, the average person looking at this, the message that they get is, oh, maybe I shouldn't be trusting Google. Maybe I shouldn't be trusting Facebook. Maybe I shouldn't be trusting what's out there in the digital space altogether. So people are far more skeptical. To qualify this, oops, that went too fast. To qualify this, what I did was I took a look at search volumes for the topic of online privacy. And I wanted to see, okay, back in 2017, what was search volume like for this, or how popular were these terms, and now how popular is it? So for example, the keyword data privacy, that's the search volume or the popularity, if you want to think about it like that, is up 400% since 2017. The keyword online privacy and security is up 1,200%. The keyword why is data privacy important is up 767% since 2017. It's not just, oh, okay, young people, they're aware, they know what's going on, they're searching for this thing. It's even your grandmother, and I'll prove it to you, because who else besides your grandmother or possibly grandfather is searching for this site is not secure, Internet Explorer, because the search volume for that is also up 189% since 2017. Overall, in the US, the topic of data privacy is 83% more popular, if you want to think about it that way, or worldwide 104% increase in search volume in this topic since 2017. And I would guarantee you that it's other topics as well, things about, let's say, can I trust these reviews? Or I don't have to dig into the data to tell you that it's up. I have like my father asking me about this, and my father barely knows how to use WhatsApp. People have changed. They're far more skeptical. They're far more aware. And Google is also far more aware and far more skeptical. I kind of think of SEO in like sense of eras. 2014, 15, 16. I am not good with years, obviously. That was sort of the era of the SERP feature in my mind. That's when feature snippets sort of became a thing and direct answers became a thing. You're still seeing the impact of that with things, like the zero-click search or the abundance of SERP features or the visualizations you have on mobile, all that great stuff. I kind of look at 2018, specifically August, where you could go technically back to March 2018, till now. I think we're on the verge of a change, but that's another entire conversation, as the era of the core updating site quality. I don't lose it when I say this, but it's not just about pages, it's about your site overall. And if you think that I'm nuts, no, Morty, SEO is about pages. Google doesn't look at sites, but I will quote John Mueller a lot here. John Mueller has talked about many, many, many times that quality is something that applies to the entire site. If you think about it, that makes really good sense. The idea is that Google, you do a search, Google sends you to whatever page. Google wants to make sure that you have a really good experience, because if you don't, it reflects poorly on them. But it also reflects poorly on them if you go to one page, and it's great, but then you continue your journey on that website, you don't bounce, and you end up on a really horrible page. That also reflects poorly on Google. Quality is an across-the-board site-wide metrics. There are patents that talk about this. In fact, I guarantee you, if you go on Twitter right now and say, hey, Glenn, Gabe, Google doesn't look at sites, they only look at pages, Glenn's head will probably explode, because Google has talked about this countless times. There we go. It's not just sites, okay? It's also landing pages are part of this. Landing pages, believe it or not, are part of your larger site. And this is what I'm talking about when I say, landing pages, we haven't really evolved in how we think about them. For some reason, which we'll get into, we sort of think of landing pages like independent entities or orphan pages in many ways, sometimes literally orphan pages. They're not part of our larger site. Things that we would do or wouldn't do rather on our blog or our product pages, we're happy to do on landing pages. It's just a landing page. It's a different thing. It's a different kind of scheme and a whole different kind of construction that we're trying to do. But it's not, because landing pages are indeed part of your larger site. And think about it for a second. A landing page like this, there's no real content here getting someone to sign up for an email. Is there really any differentiation between this landing page and a similar site offering a similar landing page for the same keyword? No, just sign up for this email, refer a friend, whatever it is. The reason why this landing page ranked, and yes, this landing page used to rank, is because of the larger site that it was on. Except that this larger site had a bit of a problem. This is drax.com or drakes.com, because there's no period in the URL, and that's entirely confusing. But I'm not going to pick on this site, but it's one of the famous sort of sites that got hit by the core algorithm updates. You can see that it got hit by the Medic update. It got bumped back up during the Maverick update, not a core update. The Maverick update in July 2019 was this massive unconfirmed update. And then it lost all its rankings again, and that's where it's pretty much stayed. And you can see that's where this landing page also has stayed. Landing pages are part of a larger site, and it's time that you start thinking about them as part of the larger site and what it means to be a part of the site, as opposed to this thing that we don't have any links, except if we're going to link to another product. We don't want to tie it to the site. We'll treat it almost like a landing page for an ad, which is a bad idea, I think. Just to show you that, okay, there's two ideas I'm basically going to get into. There's the idea that a landing page doesn't exist as an independent entity separate from the rest of the site. And that means you need to think about the landing page differently. There's also the idea that what's on the page needs to be of a certain nature now, and that's very different to how we may have thought of the content that should be or the tone that should be on a landing page back in the day, which is still a prevalent way of thinking about landing pages. I'm going to go to show you a case here. This is a landing page that shows information sorry, about a small business loan. So it's a YMYL query. It's your money, your life. It's the kind of thing that can really mess you up if you don't get this right, your life up literally. And you can see during the September 2019 core update, they lost a lot of their rankings and never really recovered. Here's why. Again, it's a YMYL query. If you screw this up, if you take out a bad business loan or you take out a $100 million loan, you can literally mess your life up for the rest of your life. It's something you have to get right. Except here, this page basically treated it as like they're selling a used Chevy with a bad engine. Like, look at the language here. Our business term loan never goes out of style. We all love a classic. Google picked up on the tone. It didn't pick up on the tone the way you and I pick up on the tone, but it picked on the tone because it profiled the word choice. It profiled the phraseology and said, hey, this kind of phraseology is appropriate for a very marketing salesy kind of thing. Whereas this page, because it's a YMYL query and you need real information, should be toned down a bit, which is what I'm telling you is you need to tie your landing pages to the rest of the site. And you also need to tone it down a bit. And I get it, right? The problem with a landing page is that's where you make your money. You're trying to get conversion and there's an anxiety there, a natural anxiety. They're like, hey, I got to get these people to convert, got to get the conversion, got to get the conversion, got to get the conversion. But if you're not careful with that anxiety, you will go too far like they did here. And you see this very often, too many CTAs, over-aggressive CTAs, over-aggressive language, overuse of marketing language like you see right here, because of that anxiety of, hey, we got to get the conversion, which is sort of why I think landing pages, the way we think about landing pages in regards to SEO and CRO, haven't evolved far enough relative to the rest of the content that we deal with. This site did try to get better. They put in, an FAQ. What is a term loan? How to apply for a business term loan. They got information, which I think you need to recognize about landing pages that fundamentally speaking, or immediately speaking, if you want to think about it like that, landing pages are informational. The user is not thinking about conversions. You might look at a landing page about, okay, a landing page is about conversions. To the user, a landing page is about information. And then secondarily buying, because if you don't have the information first, you don't click and you don't buy. So the immediate intent, if you want to call it that, is informational. You have to offer serious information, especially if you're dealing with a more complex product or service. Obviously, if you're just getting someone to sign up for a newsletter, okay, what kind of content are you going to have there? So sign up for this newsletter. But you can see here on the right, the classic small, the classic small business loan, they still stayed within, they still haven't fully recovered. You have to, I think, in my personal opinion, you have to tone it down a little bit, especially, most definitely in a YMYL situation like this one. I'll give you one more for the road. This is not a landing page, but it just goes to what Google is doing and how you should think about not just your landing pages, but your pages in general. Yes, you get a 2-for-1 here. We're talking about your landing pages and you get tips for all of your pages. So this is a product review page. Kicks off in February 21. There's really good rankings, and April 21 comes around, or the April 21 product review update comes around. First product review update. We're currently in the middle of the second one, and get killed. And it's the same reason why. This page should be offering information about microwaves. What's the best microwave? How do you choose a microwave? What should you consider before getting a microwave? Like, it's so complicated to choose a microwave, I guess. But if you look at the language here that I highlighted in red, it's achieve fast and delicious results with your recipes. Delicious meals. Why not go the extra mile with this excellent built-in microwave oven? Is that really a product review, or is that a push to sell something so the affiliate link will earn them some money? Like, let's be real what this is. And Google understands what this is. I'm just pointing out again, it's across the board, but particularly it applies to landing pages, that you have to be careful of how far you go, because if you go too far now, Google will not let you rank well. Onwards. Oh, by the way, this is the same story with every single core update. This is very much a pattern across the board. Yes, I know the product review update was not a core update, except from the fact that it functioned, or it looked at quality of the page and the site very much like a core update did. But no, it's not a core update. The point is like this. Your landing pages are part of your larger site. So if you want your landing pages to rank, also think about the quality of the larger site. Also tie the landing page to the larger site. In other words, if your if your site is a great site, you have a wonderful site, well, then take advantage of that with your landing pages. Connect the landing page to that. There's multiple ways you can do that. If you want to throw like a couple related articles to whatever product or service you're selling from the blog, that's a great way to connect the blog to the landing page. Oh, you're worried about conversions, I understand. You can set that up in a way that it doesn't interfere with your conversions, but it shows Google, hey, let's use the site-wide authority for the landing page also. You have to have real information on the page. I'm going to show you really second a great example of this all the way at the end. So let's get into some data to sort of support what I'm talking about here. Okay, this is sort of a fun little thing of mine. Okay, we think of data as, okay, this is a data, it's very linear, it's very clear, A plus B equals C, but that is not how data works. I am telling this as someone who works for a tool provider. Data tells you a direction, gives you a direction. It points out certain flags and says, okay, maybe you should look at this. You still have to qualitatively look at this. This is not what I'm going to present, is not the kind of data where you walk away and say, okay, that was very clear and definitive. Not that all data should be that way. Sometimes, I think it was Barry Adams had a great tweet about this. He said, you know, sometimes not the perfect data is still good data and tells you information. The data I'm going to share with you points in a certain direction. It kind of points to the same direction that what I talked about earlier about how people are looking at things and how search engines are looking at things. So it's all part of one larger puzzle, and I'm using the data that way. That being said, what I did was I took a look at 10,000 URLs, landing page URLs from 2017, and I looked at 10,000 current landing pages, and I looked at their average rank, and the average rank for the average landing page went from 35 to 30. Hooray, landing pages are doing better. Also, and this is an interesting stat to keep in mind throughout this presentation, we'll come back to a similar stat later. The average landing page now ranks for fewer keywords, meaning Google saying, hey, this page is primarily about this. Let's get rid of all that extra fluff. You're not going to rank for those periphery keywords anymore. Now, that's a very broad stroke of data. It's not really helpful, particularly because I like going backwards in my presentations, by the way. The 10,000 URLs here in 2017, I don't know if they'll still exist even in 2021. They could be gone. They could be 404. They could be, I don't know. So what I did was I took a look at around 1,200 URLs from 2017 that still exist, that are still around, landing page URLs, and looked at their performance from 2017 all the way through 2021 to get a full picture of it by looking at where these pages rank on average for keywords where they rank within the top 100 positions. Ready? Here we go. Landing pages, when looking at keywords where they rank 100 or better, ranked 39 in 2017, and now they rank 35. You're all doing a great job. Landing pages are ranking so much better, hooray, except not so fast. Because that too was a very broad stroke. When you start parsing it by position groupings, like let's look at where these landing pages rank for the keywords that they rank 50 or better. Well, now there's a marginal decrease in ranking, whereas in 2017, these landing pages ranked on average 30 on the SERP. Now they rank 32. Let's do better than that. Let's take a look at the top, the keywords where they rank in the top 20 positions. Now, instead of ranking 10, these pages on average rank 23. Uh-oh, that's a little bit of a problem. So again, to summarize, if you break down the landing page rankings from 2017 through 2021, the closer you get to the top of the SERP, the lower the ranking is relative to the past, relative to 2017. Great. Now what? Now what is, I start looking at tons of landing pages, analyzing if there's any technical issues. Why did the landing pages that went up go up? Why did the landing pages that went down from 2017 go down? I looked at content patterns, I looked at formats, I looked at links, and I found nothing. So I went back to the drawing board. I went back to the idea of, hey, landing pages sometimes don't have a ton of content on them. They exist within the context of the larger site. Let's take a look at the larger site, which would have meant looking at hundreds of thousands of URLs, which I didn't have time for. I'm pretty sure the data team would have killed me for doing it at that particular moment. So what I did was I said, let's take a look at the homepage, and let's have the homepage be the agent or the representative of the site overall. Now that is an interesting concept. Yes, the homepage does represent the site on the one hand. On the other hand, it doesn't. So that is a limitation the data I'm about to share with you. Yes, I just pointed out my own limitations because you know what? When you look at data, you should know the limitations. And I am perfectly happy to share the limitations because that's a really healthy thing to do when looking at data. So what I did was I looked at the landing pages that we had and these 1,200 landing pages, and I took a look at the home pages that correlate to those landing pages. So the home page for the landing pages that I analyzed. And I took a look at their average rank of these home pages back in 2017 and now in 2021. And finally, I went through this data. You have to understand that when you go through data, you're looking for you're parsing it this way, you're parsing it that way, you're categorizing it this way, you're categorizing it that way, you're trying to pull something out and trying to find a pattern. This was one of the only patterns I saw in the entire data set, which is no matter which way you look at it, when you're looking at these home pages that represent the landing pages were analyzed, at the top, where they rank in the top 100, where they rank in the top 50, where they rank in the top 20, they lost an average of 6 or 7 positions on average from 2017 to 2021. So these home pages that correlate to the landing pages have lost about 6 or 7 positions no matter which way you parse the data since 2017. That is a pattern. And now what? I didn't know what to do with this. So I started to panic. Not really. I said, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's take a look at the URLs, the landing pages that improved since 2017. So we're just looking at landing pages that since 2017 have improved their rankings. These landing pages back in 2017 ranked 33. Now they rank 10. Of course they rank better because we're only looking at improved URLs. But what I did was looked at the home pages for these URLs as well and saw their average rank here in 2017 was 44 and is now 47. In other words, it's a break in the pattern. When you look at all of the home pages that represent the landing pages in the data set, no matter top 100 keywords, top 50 keywords, top 20 keywords, they all lost on average 6 to 7 positions, no matter how you parsed it, except when you look at the improved URLs. When a landing page improved in ranks since 2017, the home page also did better, relatively speaking, and only lost an average of 3 positions. What am I trying to tell you? Lesson 1. I think that the reason why that the home pages didn't do as poorly as the other pages in the data set, that the improved landing pages, their home pages did better. Well, it's all related. The landing pages that did better are on sites that also did better. In other words, the site and the landing page, the site overall and the landing page are connected. The landing page does better, the site does better. The site's doing better, the landing page does better. You have to think about your landing page as being a part of your larger site, which again means, practically speaking, don't orphan it. Don't be afraid to link to other more authoritative parts of your site. If you have a great FAQ that's super authoritative that Google loves, link to it somehow on the landing pages. Share that authority, share the love kind of thing. If you want to have this, you want to think just about conversions, you don't want to have any other links there, so sort of like a PPC kind of landing page, then run that for PPC and no index hits, so it's no problem. But for your landing pages, when you think of organic rank, interconnect them with the rest of the site, because you see here from the data and you see here what's going on in the core updates. Google is thinking about your landing pages and your other pages as one thing. They lend authority or lack of authority to each other. So connect the landing pages to the rest of your site. Don't orphan them. Okay, one more stat. Remember I said, hey, take a look at the stat where the number of keywords that the landing pages rank for on average went down. Well, on the improved URLs, the URLs that went up in ranks since 2017, they went from ranking for 51 keywords on average to just 12. Meaning Google is saying, hey, stay in your lane. We'll rank you really well for the core things that your landing page talks about. For this periphery thing, you're gonna try to cast a wide net and grab a whole bunch of keywords that aren't exactly related is over. And you saw this in the actual, I saw this, now you're seeing it, in the actual keywords. So when I was looking at the top keywords, the top ranking keywords for these landing pages, there was a very clear pattern. The keyword that they ranked for, the top keyword that they ranked for in 2017 was very general. Like the site is the pond outlet. In 2017, their top ranking keyword was pond tools. In 2021, it's garden pond tools or my school. was the top ranking keyword in 2017 was my school management. Now it's my school management software price list. The top keywords, the keywords that's bringing in the most traffic, that's not branded for the most part, that these sites are ranking for is way more specific than it used to be, which is lesson number 2. Lesson number 1, the site and the landing page are interconnected. You have to interconnect that landing page. Don't think of your landing page as something separate from your site, as we often do. Lesson number 2 is you have to offer really targeted, really good information on that page, because Google's getting better at understanding intent, matching that intent, and matching very specific, highly detailed, highly nuanced content to that highly detailed, highly nuanced query, or a top-level query that Google understands the intent of. What I'm trying to say is there is a mindset shift that needs to happen with landing pages. And fundamentally, it's that brand marketing, SEO, and conversions, these are all worlds that are very much colliding, much in the way that users and Google, the way that users are thinking, the way that Google is thinking, are very much merging as well. In specific, and I think it's sort of the litmus test, brand marketing and site perception, we'll call it, is a part of SEO. Oh my God, what did he just say? I just said that brand marketing and site perception is a part of SEO. Shocked face again. It's not crazy. John Mueller has talked about this multiple times. I'm gonna keep quoting John Mueller. It's an SEO webinar. We're gonna quote John Mueller. John talked about if you have a website basically that has like an old HTML table and it looks like, hey, it's 1995 on this website, that does impact rankings. Okay, this is not a new concept, although it does sound new the way I'm phrasing it. I'll give you an example of this. Let's go back to draxe.com. So he has a webpage called How to Maintain Normal Blood Sugar, and it's written by Jillian Levy, who is a CHHC. I don't know what a CHHC is, but that sounds really authoritative. She's a CHHC. Except when you go through the page, you get a pop-up, and you get all of these banner ads all along the way. Would you trust this article? Would you trust Jillian Levy, CHHC, if you saw all of these ads to get you to buy a product? Is the content about buying a product, or is the content about helping you with your, your blood pressure, blood sugar, whatever it was? Just like you wouldn't buy this product, or you wouldn't think of this page as authoritative or buy these products probably. We already know what Google thinks about this. It's looking at the page and saying, hey, this doesn't pass the snuff test. Something is wrong here. We're not going to rank it. We're going to actually really destroy the rankings. In other words, when you're thinking about creating a landing page now, and I'll say this again as a representative of a tool provider, do not start with keyword research. Start with empathy and then go to keyword research. Start with understanding where are your users coming from, what's their life context, what are their needs, what needs to happen, what is going on with them. Write content that's helpful to them. And then once you do, make sure you understand, this is the brand marketing part of it, understand how that content is perceived. Because let's go back a second. I told you I go backwards in my slides all the time. This content from Jillian Levy, CHHC, could be amazing. She's an CHHC. I'm going to say that a million times. She could have written it probably is great. I didn't read it, but it probably is amazing content. Except that when you look at it and you see all this nonsense, you ignore it. It's not just enough to write really good, really quality content, but you have to take a step back, pretend you're the user, and look at it from a brand perspective. Hey, what's the user perception when they look at this page, when they see what's going on this page? When I say look, I can mean just the way you interlink. If you're always interlinking to a specific product, clearly you're just trying to get me to buy that product. Like, I get it. Everyone gets it. Look at how it's being perceived, because your content is your brand. And this is particularly pertinent to landing pages, because this is where people are, I mentioned before, grandma skeptical. This is where they're skeptical. They're not so skeptical about your blog content. I mean, they are, but they don't have to open their wallet for your blog content. But for your landing pages, they do. So people are skeptical, and if they see, CTA, buy now, buy now, buy now, you can have wonderful, helpful content that explains your product in the best way possible. But the perception is, this is spammy, this is pushing me too hard, this is something to be skeptical about. And Google does the same thing. I've seen it where Google will look at a page, it's good content, it's too many CTAs, like too heavy. what I'm trying to say when I say brand and SEO are one thing is that perception is the litmus test. If you go to a page, and it could be anything from the tone of the content, to the type of the content, to the structure of the content, to the way you utilize interlinking and CTAs, everything about the page, the litmus test is how is the page being perceived? And if you, as a user, would potentially walk away feeling this is not the most authoritative thing I've ever seen, good chance Google's doing the same thing. Again, you and I do that qualitatively. Google is using quantitative metrics to simulate a qualitative understanding. So it's a different way of getting there, but that's where they're trying to get to. I'll say that I think this is the future of SEO. Ooh, that's a big statement right there. It's experience and usability is going to be a big deal going forward because it's going to be what differentiates your content. And again, I'll quote John Mueller. I used to work at Wix, and this is a conversation that we had together where John was saying, hey, look, there's Shopify, Wix, there's a lot of CMSs who are doing a lot of really good things with their platforms, and they're making it better to do technical SEO, or they're making technical SEO less of a problem. And John's saying this is great because now a small business can focus on writing actual content. Keep in mind, by the way, that Google has a shortage of good content. There's a content gap. Yes, you and I may see lots of content on the SERP. Most of it's not good. In fact, John was talking the other day about the product review update and saying, hey, when you just list a couple of products and try to get people to buy it, that's not a real review. There's not enough really good content, and Google needs the experts who know the content topic to write that content, which basically means business owners. So Google, if you pay attention to this, Google is very much talking more about the CMSs than it used to because it needs them to allow a business owner or whoever it may be to write that content to be able to rank it because there is a content gap. But the point is that if the CMS are taking care of a lot of the technical problems behind the scenes, it allows for content to be produced by people who were not producing content before. And the differentiating factor between all of this new good content is going to be how usable it is. I'll give you another example from John. I won't read the whole thing, but it's up there for you to read. But John's basically saying, hey, we as SEOs love to tweak, H2s, H1s, title tags. There are going to be tools as time goes on that do that for you. You don't have to, tinker with that. That you should focus on the actual content itself. The proof of this, by the way, is the fact that Google doesn't use your title tag anymore. That is the proof of what I'm saying. The things that we worry about of this, title tags, title this, H2 that, H3 that, I'm not saying they're not important. But the proof in the pudding is that Google's not using your title tag anymore. And you're still it's not, this is Google basically saying, we got this. The differentiating factor is going to be assuming that the content, imagine the content on 2 pages is the same. There's no technical issues. It's 2 small business owners. They both wrote very similar content. It's great content. It's on the same topic. It's pretty much the same thing. They're both using a CMS that handles the technical aspects of it for the most part. What's the differentiating factor between why does Google rank one page above another page? It's the presentation from A to Z of everything. How digestible, how efficient, how advantageous is the page to a user? How good is the page at giving over the information to the user really well? How usable is one page over another page? If another page is not as structured, if another page is not as usable, if it's not as formatted as well, if the tone is maybe a little bit off, that's going to be a differentiating factor. Usability is going to be a differentiating factor, and that's really important for landing pages because the usability here sometimes stinks because we're so worried about the conversion that we're not worried about how digestible is the information for the user. How efficient are we at giving the user the information the best way possible? And is it formatted in a way that makes sense for the user, as opposed to, again, just not to be cliche, but too many CTAs all over the place kind of thing. Practically speaking, it means connect your landing page to your site as much as possible, interlink to other pages. They don't have to be product pages. You want to throw a couple of related articles at the bottom of your page to a couple of blog posts. Great idea. Share the wealth. Let the landing page share from the larger authority of the larger site, assuming that your site is good, which I assume that it is. Also, make sure that you're sharing helpful content because, again, landing pages, the immediate use to a user, not to you it's conversions, but to a user is information about a product or service so that they then can click on the CTA. So don't go overboard pushing the conversion because as we saw, again, Google's more skeptical and the user's more skeptical. So even if you get past the search engine and the user clicks on the URL from the SERP, heads to your website, sees what you've done there, they're going to leave because even your grandmother's more skeptical. I'll give you an example at the end. So I was working on a website. They rank really well. They're a good website. They're doing a great job. They have a lot. They're very landing page heavy. Not a lot of informational content. They're not there yet. They're not at that stage of their evolution. A lot of landing page, which is fine. One of the things that they're not doing a great job with, or weren't doing a great job with, is putting informational content on the landing page. So explaining to the user, what is this product? Why do you need it? What are the advantages? And how does it work? Their competitors are. In fact, their competitor on this landing page, and it's very much a landing, you look at it, it's a landing page, but they have enough informational content, enough good informational content, because they realize that the user is there for information that they rank for a feature snippet. So if you want your landing pages to appear in feature snippets, you need to take a step back, stop, I understand the anxiety, but keep it in check and put more informational content on the landing page that makes sense for the user to explain what your product or service is, why it's helpful, why you need it, how does it work, and so forth. And on that, I will end. So
awesome
I think now we're going to have a, I'm sorry.
No, you go right ahead.
It ended.
That was a great presentation, Morty. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, let's get to it because we definitely have some questions to go through. All right. So from Carrie asks, what is your philosophy? Should a landing page used for ads be in the navigation or not shown in the nav?
So a landing page for ads can be a totally different thing. It doesn't have to be, I mean, look, I think from the CRO perspective, you should have nav there. My personal opinion. Because the user, they're going to be looking for other information. They might find something. If they can't access it, hey, okay, what I clicked on the ad, I got this landing page, the product looks great. What is this company? What do they do? What are they about? Now I got to go back to Google. So personally, I think that navigation is a good idea. I know Brian Massey has a study, I think, about this. So head over to Google and do a search for that. Brian Massey on header on navigation on landing pages.
Perfect. And maybe I asked that wrong. Let's go. So I think Carrie is asking if it should be in the navigation. So if you have a landing page, should you put it in your navigation?
Sure. I mean, you can have the hierarchy however you want to have it. You can have, products and then have a whole list, or you can do it by subcategory. So you have the product subcategory, then the individual landing pages. But yeah, you want people to be able to find it, especially if they come, they look, let's say they found it through search. They end up back at your site, and now they're looking for this landing page again.
Perfect. So Denny is asking for concept of landing page being part of the site, how does that apply for a subdomain? Does the subdomain factor into overall site quality, or is it considered separate in the eyes of Google?
There's Don Mueller's talked about this. I believe it's not. I don't believe that it's completely separate. It is a little. It's treated somewhat differently, but no. Like Google understands that this subdomain is part of the overall domain. Hope that answers that.
Let's see. If not, Denny, maybe you can let us know. And so Ricardo is asking, is it all about the domain? Landing pages linked to your page and built with an external software, so different domain affects it too. So if they have like, a subdomain or a landing page, like a separate site they're using for theirs.
So same answer. Like again, Google understands, like, if it's like, I don't know, travel.cnn.com versus sports.cnn.com, Google understands that's cnn.com.
Perfect. Casey's asking, how should we handle landing pages that address time-specific events? Is it better to leave them up or unpublish or redirect?
I mean, once the event is over, I would not have that page around anymore. You can, I mean, if there's some kind of benefit to ranking it, which I don't think there would be, you can remove it from the navigation. But no, it's a bad look right? If it's outdated information, the user gets there. It's forget Google for a second. It's a bad experience. It shows that you're not keeping up with your website.
Agreed. David asks, is it a good practice to treat service pages the same way as the landing pages? Should we be putting in relevant articles and interlinking to them?
So I think that that's a little bit different. The answer is yes, like you can do that. I think Google understands, like, hey, look, like this is a product page. There's a whole group of products here. I think that's more about the fact that you have, let's say, you're up to date on all your products, everything's in stock, all that kind of thing. Google kind of understands, like, hey, this is a product page, which is a very unique sort of identity and what it's supposed to be doing. But yes, like the interlinking, the idea of that if your site overall is not going to do well, your product pages are also not going to do well.
Let's see. So Irving is asking, what's your opinion on user-generated content reviews? Do they help rankings?
I don't think they help rankings.
Okay. So
I mean, if you have, I mean, if you have like, if you meaning like you have, let me rephrase. I think I misunderstood that. Like, if you're talking about like a blog and you have like a comment section, then no. If you're talking about you have a product page or a landing page and there are reviews there that verify the information that you're talking about, I think that could be helpful. Yes.
let's see. So we have a lot of questions. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure that they're relevant to what we're talking about here, Morty. So
No, we're all good.
Rodrigo has a question. Keyword cannibalization is a real problem between landing pages and blog content, for example. If it is, how do we deal with that?
I mean, there's multiple ways you can deal with it, right? You can either adjust the blog post to not deal with whatever that landing page is dealing with, or it could be the landing page is the one that's the problem. Typically the advice with keyword cannibalization is you can do a 301 redirect, which wouldn't really make any sense here because you're talking about two different types of pages. If the case is where you have a landing page that should be ranking higher than the blog post, I don't think doing canonical is going to help you there because that's not what you want. It's two totally different kind of pages. You might want to think about moving the blog content to a different topic kind of thing.
Okay. So Chris is asking, there was a lot of talk about content and informational based sites or queries. What about e-commerce? So for those e-commerce sites that have a healthy product and category structure, 10,000 more pages indexed with supporting technical articles, how-tos, any suggestions for them if they saw a drop in July and November core updates this year?
You mean to say, like, you say that one more time? Sorry.
For e-commerce sites, so basically it sounds like they had a drop in July and November around the core updates. So looking for
Okay.
any advice, if they've got a good structure, what are some other
Okay.
things, that they can do if they're just e-commerce?
So again, if you're e-commerce, the same sort of thing kind of applies. Make sure that the content on the page, even if it's a product, right? A product page, have really good information there. I mean, the return policies, the really nice description, the specs and everything. By the way, people make a mistake with the specs. They put an image there and not a chart or a table. But my general advice with core updates or any update is to see what pages replaced you. If you lost rankings and something else replaced you, what's different about what you're doing versus what they're doing, and try to see if you can find some pattern. With the core updates, it's generally about content. So look at what kind of content. I'll give you a case we were looking at a while ago. It was about logo making, something like that. And a lot of the sites that were doing better had a whole like FAQ section on it was on the landing page. It might have been a landing page, whole FAQ section on the landing page that this site didn't have. So like that might be something that you can pick up and say, hey, there might be something there for you to focus on. Or with the initial product review update back in April, this one's still rolling out. I can't tell yet, but a lot of what I saw back then was, there were these sites that were having buying guides, like to understand, like, how do you go through and buy this thing? How do you think about it? Where do you go? How do you buy it? What should you look out for? Google really liked that. So going and looking and seeing like which pages are doing well, which pages are not doing well, and what are the content differences between them, is really helpful, but it means you have to really dive in, because you actually have to go through and read the content on the other pages. There's no other way to really do that, in my opinion.
So Prasad has a question. Is there any specific structure that we need to follow while designing landing pages?
I'm going to say no, it depends. It's, whatever structure works for the user. I mean, if you're asking my advice about how I think about landing pages, it's what your product, obviously what your product is, very high level, what it does, why it's useful to the user, and then how the user, that sort of thing that's applicable, that may or may not be applicable. If it's like a comb, you don't need to put how to use it, but generally, okay, what it is, so the user gets to the page, I know what this is, why it's important to them, why it should be important to them, and how to go about using it, or how to go about, the pricing, all that kind of stuff. But that's just me.
I think that's good. I think it's really about thinking about the user path, right?
Yeah, that's basically what you're doing. Thinking about, like, imagine you're trying to teach somebody something. So you want to tell them what it is, and then you want to keep their interest, because now I know what it is, but why is it important to you?
Genevieve asks, can you talk to the relationship between landing pages and articles on a news site when it comes to linking? Is it better to link a keyword to a landing page or to a standout article if the keyword would make sense for either page?
I've never seen, I'm like, news sites are a totally different beast. I don't want to answer because I haven't really worked on news sites before like that. So I'm gonna pass.
Okay. All right. Arias is asking, would Google ever penalize a page for being too long with content?
Yeah, I mean, if the content's not relevant, or you're just writing for the sake of writing, or you're just trying to, stuff the keywords in there. And the whole idea of like length is a funny kind of concept. Like, you should write content that's long enough for the user. Sometimes users want something shorter, sometimes they want something longer. If imagine you're selling a very simple product, right? You're selling cups, and your landing page for cups. Like, all right, how much content are you going to write there? It's a cup. Or as opposed to you're selling architectural software. Now, that's a very complex product. You're going to need to write more. So it depends on what you're trying to do and who you're trying to do it for.
Perfect. So Dominique is asking, going back to outdated landing pages, if there's a landing page for a webinar and the webinar is then available on demand, how should you go about that landing page? Redirecting to a video, redirecting to a blog talking about the webinar, and then linking to the video?
I mean, yeah, I would. You can link to the video. You can link to other webinars. I would. That's almost like a blog post, right? You have the webinar. You have the previous webinars that you did. You sort of share that wealth there. That would just make the most sense. And I mean, it's a great way to get people to understand, like, hey, what you do, what kind of content you're offering, and the fact that this webinar is probably really good because you offer 20 other webinars. 20 is too many. 3 other webinars that also look really interesting. So I'll click here.
Okay, let's see. All right, so Deidre is asking, is it best to stick a single call to action at the top of the page while providing more information below the fold?
So call to action at the top of the page is a very normal thing that you see. I would imagine there's a ton of CRO studies that debate where that should be or should not be. But no, that's totally fine. I don't think there's any, from an SEO point of view, no, that absolutely, you have the product, maybe a line or two of, what it is, and then you go, maybe it's below the fold at that point, maybe it's not, depending upon how big that hero banner is, then you start going into it. That's totally normative.
Ian asks, how frequently would you recommend web pages are updated to get Google credit? I mean,
say that one more time. Sorry.
Ian's
I
asking,
just just cut out for a second. I couldn't hear you.
how frequently would you recommend web pages are updated to get Google credit? I mean, I'm thinking maybe, to make sure that it's indexed, make sure that it's crawled.
I mean, it depends on this. The crawling is more dependent on the site. If you're, the New York Times, Google's going to crawl you constantly. If you're a newer site, that Google's still trying to get the hang of, so they might be a little bit slower. I don't think it's about updating content to get Google to crawl your site. If you're regularly producing content, Google will see that you're alive and will increase the the crawling for you. It's not a matter of, I don't think, updating the content on a page just to get Google to crawl you. I don't think that's the way to look at it.
All right. So Lori's asking for advice with her boss. So her boss refuses to follow some of the needs for site search, such as phone number, blog information. He wants to sell products, and that's it. He doesn't want her suggestions. So is there a way that maybe she can take something back and say, hey, you know, Mr. Bossman, this is why we should implement this?
Those are always so tough. I'm a big advocate. I'm a former teacher, so I'm a big advocate for education, of really trying to show them, hey, look, this is what's happening with how people are thinking about things. Here's what's happening, how search engines are thinking about things. Here's an example from a competitor. If it's a boss and they're so bottom line focused in that way, then cater to that, right? Educate them, show them what it is, but then show them, hey, here's a competitor, whether it's in your vertical or another vertical, if someone's doing and they're getting X number of traffic, even if it's not in your vertical, there's no case that you can think of, you know, your competitors, but you could find a case somewhere else, you know, little plug, you know, throw the domain to SEMrush, show what's happening, and say, hey, look, if we did the same thing, we could be getting the same results. Speak to their nature. If their nature is bottom line, educate them about the process, because I think education is always a very important thing that helps gain respect, and hey, you understand what you're talking about, you're an authority, and then speak their language, which is in this case money.
I think that's a great way to go about it. Pranava is asking, should landing pages for an ad, so if they're using them, you know, for PPC, let's say, should they be indexed in search engines?
I generally think not. I mean, obviously it depends. I'm gonna go with it depends on the landing page and what you're using. Because yeah, you can use it, you know, you might have your landing page be a generally, you know, great landing page. If you're using it for PPC, it totally works for search. But in general, what I see is the landing pages for PPC are not the same quality that needs to rank in search, or not the same structure. Look, you're in PPC, you're doing PPC because you want that quick conversion. That's a very different way, and a very different user, by the way, versus someone who gets it in search itself. So generally speaking, I say not. I know SEJ has Nava Hopkins and Ask the SEO. That's a great question for her to answer. But I think generally not. They don't generally work for SEO. They're not the kind of page that you would want to see in search, because they're serving a very different purpose.
Yeah, usually they're very heavy into that call to action, which is something that you said,
Very,
you know.
very heavy. Yeah, like bam, which makes sense because that's what PPC is, right? And the user, and that's not a problem for the user. They get that. They clicked on an ad. Like, I expect to be sold to. They're at that point in the funnel where it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. So we've got a few more minutes. So if you guys have any more questions, please send them in. Morty, you're like flying through these. I mean, you're answering like a lot of what we have here. Just real quick before we get to the next question, I just want to let everybody know who is here with us still. We will be on LinkedIn Live directly after this webinar. We are talking about video SEO. So if you've got an hour or you want to hear us in the background, hop over to LinkedIn Live and we'll see you there. Let's get to some more questions, Morty. So let's see. Brandon is asking, and this is a question, you know, we have pop-ups on our site. We have pop-ups because they work, but he's asking, do pop-ups hurt SEO? Exit intent pop-ups specifically.
So it depends on how intrusive they are. There's the intrusive interstitial penalty, which is now part of the page experience update, which applies on mobile. So if you have these really intrusive interstitial ads, Google has guidelines on what those are. You can imagine, like, you know, a full view interstitial ad, you can't find the X, like, you know, damn it, where the hell is the X kind of thing. That's a problem. To what extent is it a problem is a really good question. I think it was 2016 when Google rolled this out initially, and everyone was like, oh man, everything's gonna go crazy. Everyone, there are interstitial ads, and then nothing really happened. So I don't know what the actual impact is, but technically speaking, no, you shouldn't do that. And a bad idea for your users anyway. in my personal long term at least, because it's a frustrating experience. That's coming to mobile. I'm coming to desktop rather, when Google goes with the page experience core web vitals on desktop. So that's going to be there as well. So it's something to keep in mind. You know, interstitials are a funny one, or pop-ups are a funny one. I've had sites, you know, they threw up an interstitial because they have, you know, tons of images they wanted to load, which they wanted there for conversions, and they didn't want the user to keep seeing the, you know, the loading happening, so they threw it in. By the time you clicked out of it, everything loaded right. So there's a whole lot of, you know, considerations to take into account, but technically speaking, there is an interstitial ad problem, or intrusive interstitial ad penalty, part of the page experience app, coming to desktop in February according to Google, but who knows what the deadline will actually be in the end.
Okay, that was good, thanks. So Madeline is asking, let's see, is Google not using custom title tags because they are not written well enough? Is there anything that we can do to get Google to use the title tag we write, or are they just irrelevant now?
Well, yes and no. Okay, so I think there's multiple theories. Personally speaking, the way I see this is that it's important to remember that, like, most of the web is not optimized. I mean, you can see that when you look at, you know, the crux data coming out on WordPress. They're not doing as well as the closed CMS as an SEO. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Why isn't, you know, WordPress doing as well with Core Web Vitals as, you know, Shopify or Wix or whatever it is? I know how to optimize my site. I can do whatever I want with my WordPress site. The answer is that most people have a WordPress site aren't optimizing that, meaning most of the web is not optimized, which goes back to my earlier point that Google needs the CMSs to handle the technical issues so that people can write content who are, you know, topic experts, business owners, let's say, can write content and it can have it rank. So, you know, the title tag thing, I think, is because most of the web is not optimized, and Google wants those sites to to rank and to get clicks. There are other theories about it. Now, if your title is not showing, the title tag is not showing as the actual title on the SERP, one is, it may not matter. Like, you take a look at CTR. If CTR is going up, then don't do anything. Hey, this is great. If CTR is going down, have a look at what they are showing, right? And say, okay, why, like, here's what I wrote, here's what Google's showing, why might they be doing that? See where they're taking it. If they're taking it from the H1, right, or they take it from the H2, right? If you want to change something there, maybe make a tweak in the H2s if Google's pulling in the H2 so that it's more to your liking, if that's something that's important to you. Or again, just, you know, see what they're actually showing and reverse engineer and say, okay, I'll put something more like that into the title tag. Maybe now Google will, when they take a look at the page again, we'll put my title tag on the SERP instead of what, you know, whatever they're using now, that kind of thing. Reverse engineering the SERP is a very good idea in general, by the way.
Perfect. So Morty, we got like 2 minutes left, and there have definitely been some more questions come in. Every time you say we only got a couple minutes, and then all the more questions come in. It's like when you're like getting ready to put the kids to bed and you're like, do you need anything to drink? And they're like, no, I'm fine. And they go to bed, and yes, you need something to drink. So
3 hours later.
That's right. That's right. So we got some more questions. We'll get these over to you guys. But before we sign off for the day, I just want to give a big thank you for being here with us today. But why don't you tell everybody where to find you and a little bit about SEMrush before we go?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. I really enjoy this. It's a really fun topic. You can find me on Twitter at Morty Oberstein. Again, SEMrush is an all-in-one SEO and digital marketing platform. There's some really cool stuff in there. Like, we're talking about landing pages and you know, writing helpful content, take a look at the topic research tool. I think it's my favorite tool in SEMrush. It's in the content marketing section. A lot of SEOs miss it because it's in the content marketing section, but hey, SEOs, you work with content. So it basically will break down a topic for you, and like all the subtopics. It'll show you, you can profile it to think like thematically. Like, I'll give you a horrible example, top of my head. I'm a big baseball nut, so I was looking at, you know, at Major League Baseball, and one of the subtopics of Major League Baseball, you know, you had the Yankees and you had the stadiums and the World Series. I mean, you can dive into a subtopic and the relevant questions that users are thinking about for that subtopic. In this case, there were questions like, is the World Series the same thing as the Super Bowl? Or is the World Series the World Baseball Classic? Are they the same thing? And there's a whole bunch of questions like that. And what you can do is you can profile and say, hey, the users are asking this type of question. This means that this topic is being treated or thought about a certain way. You get a really deep understanding about the topics that you're writing so that you could write about them in a really great way. Of course, you can use all the other tools to support your content writing efforts. So that's all I'm going to say about the topic research tool, other than the fact that I love it. And I'm not saying that because I work there. I legit love it.
Awesome. You guys do put out some killer content, so I can see why you love it. Awesome, Morty. Thanks again for being here with us. We're at the end of our time, so we're going to let everybody get back to work. Head over to LinkedIn if you want to, catch our podcast. And otherwise, we'll see everybody next time. Bye.
Bye.